Hey there YouTube, welcome back to another black powder update. I thought I'd just do a little intro on the end at the start of this one. I finished my next unit. These guys are the Brunswick Uhlans. I've been kind of holding them off for a while to sort of, I know it kind of sounds kind of a silly, sort of giving yourself a cavalry unit to try and reward yourself for doing so much infantry, but it seemed to sort of fit in place that, you know, I have been doing a lot of infantry. I think I've done like 3 or 4 battalions of infantry since I last did the Hussars, and then I did about 3 before that. You know, in a strange sort of way, doing them is a little bit of a break from just doing bog standard infantry. Without further ado, we'll head down to the table and I'll show you them. Try and keep this video short and without any unnecessary blurb in it. So let's head down to the table, show you what I've done. Catch you in a second. Okay, we're down on the desk now, and before you we have the Uhlans. So let's zoom in a little bit, and I'll give you the blurb, and then I'll give you a closer look. So basically, these guys are Perry's metals, and the only real sort of modification I did on them was that I decided not to use the spears that they were, or I suppose meant to be lances, but they were more like metal spears. I decided not to use those and instead use my. I had I think it was like a pack of 14 or a pack of 18 brass lances, or I think they were meant to be pikes actually. Which I used for my line infantry for their standards, and I think, I mean, they're really fiddly to paint and they're really fiddly to stick on, and even now they're kind of, you know, all we have to do is give them a good knock and they'll fly out their hands. But I think overall, I'm really happy with the way that they looked over the ones that they came with. The pennons are GMB. Now these are actually the first time I've actually done any type of a lancer type figure, yeah, you know, I think as an overall experience, it was quite enjoyable to do. Also, these guys were kind of saved to give myself a little bit of, I know it sounds weird giving yourself a cavalry unit as a reward for painting up lots of infantry, but that's kind of what these guys ended up being. I think I've done like 7 units of foot infantry and 2 units of cavalry, so they kind of fitted in to give myself breaks from doing bog standard foot infantry. Now let's get into the unit itself. So this unit is commanded by a Major Potts, and let's start giving you a closer look. So here we have the rear rank. You can see the uniforms there. A little bit fiddly to do. I must admit I was a little bit slow on doing the first couple, but I worked out a really good way of doing them, and then after that they just zapped out. I was doing like 5 at a time. I did 2 bunches of 5. They took me about a sort of like a 4-hour session and a little bit more the next day, maybe like an hour, to be completely finished. Really happy with how they turned out. I ended up going with electric blue. I did think about using a slightly lighter blue, but I think this electric blue was the nearest to the colour that they are on artwork. Yeah, and you know, once you work out a good way of painting them, then they're actually really quite simple to paint. I actually did all the horses first. They took me just under 2 sessions to completely finish them. That's from undercoat right the way up to being completely varnished with 2 coats of varnish. I I was really happy with the horses. I went for all sort of bays, dark bays mostly, although there are probably a couple of lighter ones in there. And now that I suppose the only downside to doing all bays is that bays aren't known for having massive amounts of markings. So it's quite difficult to try, and I think cavalry units look really good when the horses have like different markings and stuff. And it's a little bit difficult to do on bays. But I think I diversified it enough so that they have got a little bit more life to them. Now these horses, they're supposed to have like skull and crossbones on their zapkas. Now I did actually, I kind of had a bit of a brain fart and kind of forgot how to actually pronounce the type of headwear that they're wearing, and I found this little video on YouTube. If I can get it to play.
Zapka.
Actually just tells you how to pronounce it. So yeah, zapkas. And yeah, pretty easy saddlery. Now I did notice that these guys didn't have their skull and crossbones on like the hussars, which is a little bit odd. I thought they were just giving you the same horses. So I basically just went in with some white paint because the enlisted guys have white skull and crossbones, and the bugler and the officer have a silver skull and crossbones, and that's really the only sort of difference, apart from the officer having a black stripe down the middle of the shabrack on the blue that actually differentiates them. But you can see that again. I suppose they sort of follow a very standard sort of Brunswick type uniform. Apart from the fact that they have the blue vest. So you have your tabs, you have your stripes, you have your sleeves, and just the tips of the turnbacks at the back, and of course the collars, and of course their zapkas with the blue. Try and get that to zoom in. You can see that they have like this yellow stripe. They actually have this yellow ribbon that's actually covering what would be a skull and crossbones on the front of their zapka, and then they have this cross on the top, and that's all sort of brass. So I went in with an undercoat of charred brown, and then went over that with the brass. Otherwise you don't get a very good coverage. But I mean, yeah, they look kind of difficult to paint, but they're actually not that difficult at all. And I was really happy with how they turned out. So that is the one of the rear ranks. Then we have the sub-command section, which I always do for my cavalry. So this is the sergeant's stand. You can see him there. And again, obviously, pretty much the same. There's the pennons. The lances. I think these lances turned out really good idea. I actually made them like a little bit longer than the actual the ones that came with them, and I think the size is spot on. Even though this is actually the first unit of lances I've actually ever painted. So there we have the sub-command section. Now we've got. I just noticed that I've got a loose lance here. So these things are really quite easy to knock out of their hands. This one's really loose. You can see that it's actually sort of come out more or less. You can see where the paint's been exposed. I'm actually I'll leave it for now, but I will actually go in and pull it out of his hand and stick it back in. Again, obviously pretty much similar. The skull and crossbones painted on. Really nice figures. There's nothing you can say wrong with them. I think Perry's cavalry, metal cavalry, is really good. I think in some cases it's even better than like the foot infantry. Go on to the front rank now. So here we go. Again, some various markings on the horses. These are actually light bays, I think, these two. And you can see that they're slightly lighter brown. And also I made sure that I used the guys with the slightly more pointed lances towards the front and the front rank as well. And the ones holding them up at the back. So that is the front section, and then we have the opposite side here. Now some of these flags are a little bit loose. I did actually go in with a bit of PVA and stick them on, but this one it's loose that you can spin it, but it's actually held in place, so I'm not going to bother sticking it anymore. Obviously all these guys are more or less the same, so there's no need to sort of dangle too much on them. For sort of ground stuff, I did sort of like a sparse sprinkling of flowers and grass tufts, and then finally we have the officer's stand and the bugler stand. So the bugler has got a it started off being, I wanted the horse to be a little bit more grey really, but it ended up being more of a white grey in the end, so I wasn't really complaining, but yeah, I was happy with how it turned out. Bugler, pretty standard uniform apart from the fact that he has the swallow's nests, and these guys he has a silver skull and crossbones on the bugler, and the same for the officer. And of course the officer's shabrack has the thin black line down the middle, and of course that's repeated on his leg stripes. Bugle with the yellow cordage, and exactly the same types of blue, apart from the officer has his off-white belt. And he also has these sort of gold and blue shoulder tabs, which are actually, again, you'd think that's some sort of rank distinction, but it's actually more of a saying that he's an officer more than anything else. It doesn't actually denote which rank he is. And of course for his I've forgotten what that's called, that sort of strapping, they have a yellow border on it there. And of course all the horsemen have this blue and black belt. It's basically like a blue belt with I think it's like actually a leather belt more than a black stripe, but it's kind of like a thick leather belt that kind of takes up a thick line down the middle of it. And the officer has his normal white, sort of off-white, almost greyish belt with the silver cordage. So yeah, that's the command stand. And of course, again, the silver skull for the officer. And that is that. That is the Brunswick Uhlans. I've got to say, I really enjoyed doing them. They were done pretty quick as well. Like I say, even though they took 5 days in total, it certainly wasn't 5 full days. I think on the very last day, all I did was finish sticking them to their horses. And I had quite a bit of trouble with, for some reason, decided to stick the lances in their hands before putting them on the horses. And that was actually a bad idea, because you find that some of them, the lances would basically bounce into the shabrack and basically just knock the lance out of their hands. So I think I probably ended up putting about 6 lances back into their hands. And also the other thing was that one of the stands didn't line up with the front rank. The horse's head was one of the horses that's got like a low head, and it basically was banging into the bugler's horse's tail. And I basically had to, I couldn't, for some reason I just couldn't, even though I stuck these guys down with hot glue, which normally comes off really easily. These guys were absolutely refusing to budge, and in the end I thought, well, you know what, my last ditch attempt before I have to try and, because for some reason these particular Perry's horses have got really, really weak legs. literally just trying to pull them off the stand, which normally happens really easily. The bases were like actually buckling up, and you could see that there was, it was putting stress on the horse's legs, and I'd have to go back in and try and straighten out the stands and bend the horses back straight. So I had a real hard time just trying to get these guys off their milk top holders, which is something that I've never actually experienced before. Normally they pop off easy, but I think these guys just had particularly thin stands. Why, I don't know. Perhaps it's like a really old horse sculpt. Yeah, I've got to say, I think out of all the cavalry units I've painted in the last year, these have got to have been the weakest legged horses that I've come across. But again, luckily, none of them, I had no brakes, and none of them bent enough to even put sort of too much stress on the leg joints. So I've got no worries about them snapping. But I did have to do quite a bit of, basically what I'd do is I'd sort of pin them to the table, and then I'd use a pair of pliers like this, these needle nose pliers, and I'd basically just hold the stand and then push the stand flat on the actual table, and that seemed to work quite well. And also, if I needed to bend the horse, and again I'd brace the stand and I'd just slowly bend the horse straight to make it stand up. So overall, really enjoyed doing them, although they did have their darker side of lots of annoying lances falling out of hands, and trying to get the horses down, and just basically, I suppose you could say the basing of them and the finishing off of them was actually a lot more bother than would normally happen. But overall, I really enjoyed doing them, and again, this is marking another quite a big high point of this project overall, as finishing of these guys here leaves me with literally the artillery batteries, the lead battalion, and then the two command, and that will be everything done. So that's the end of the video. Coming up next, I'm kind of inkling towards getting the artillery out of the way. Now whether I do one battery, then do the lead battalion, then do another battery, and then do the command figures, I don't know, or whether I might just zap all the artillery at once, do all 4 guns, the horse artillery and the foot artillery, and just finish them all as one chunk, because obviously there's only 9 crew in total that you've got to really worry about, and to tell the truth, guns don't really take that long to do. They're basically just, in this case, the blue and black, so they're not exactly going to be particularly difficult to do. I suppose, talking about cavalry, I actually decided to go with a slightly new base. Now normally for sort of 6-pounder type artillery, I normally go for like I think it's 50 by 100 stand I normally go for, and it's a good size stand, you can fit everything on, but sometimes it's just a little bit too thin. So I decided to slightly change the bases. So these guys are, I think they are 100 by 60. So basically it's just giving you that extra width, which I think will work out really, really handy. And I think this will probably become my new standard small artillery base, because I normally use 60 by 120, I think, for my 12-pounders and bigger guns. So anyway, that's the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back again pretty soon. Please think about subscribing if you've just come across this video by fluke. Yeah, I tend to put out a video every week or so. Yeah, feel free to comment, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye bye.